Hello and welcome. And if you are in the United States, good evening. If you are in Australia, good morning. And if you are in the UK or anywhere else in Europe, what are you still doing up? It's time to go to bed.
Right?
But I'm glad to have you anyway, especially if you've got insomnia. Hey, more than happy to have you here. I am here talking about relationships in religion, and my guests today are B from the family, and Chris, Atheist Pastor, and Marie Delafont. And I am going to let each of them tell you a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves. But before I do that, I'm going to give a little caveat and give you a little idea of what we're doing here and what we're trying to do here. For anyone who saw my video from last week, it was a very heavy topic. The video was entitled Reverse Consent. And it was about a sermon given on Father's Day by Pastor Grayson Fritz of the All Scripture Baptist Church. The All Scripture Baptist Church is one of the NIFB churches. It's one of those homophobic churches, ultra-conservative, King James only. And he gave the most misogynistic sermon I have ever heard. And so I did the video on that, and the two most reprehensible things that he had to say that we're going to be dealing with on the panel today are, he said that sex is not something that a married person needs consent for, but rather if you wish to abstain from sex, you need consent from your partner to not have sex. And that's why I entitled the video Reverse Consent, is he's taken the consent ideas and completely turned them on their head. And the other thing he said that was completely reprehensible was that if a woman is told by her husband to jump off a cliff, that she should do it. And so the idea that a woman is to disobey God and obey her husband instead, elevating men over God, that a woman should break the law, that she should harm herself or harm another person on the command of her husband. Yeah, that was pretty bad. But one thing I did want to point out is this program is not intended to offer counseling or psychiatric advice. We on the panel are not licensed professionals in those areas. If you're listening to this stream and you realize that you need help, please seek help from a licensed professional. Do not take anything here as advice that is directed at you. This is a discussion. It is not an advice program. We are here to discuss what we have heard and seen are disturbing religious ideas that are harmful to relationships and especially harmful to women. I've asked Chris to join the panel to give us a male perspective on these issues. If you personally know any of the panel members or have been in a relationship with any of the panel members or know anyone who's been in a relationship with one of the panel members, please know that if we are talking about an experience, we are not talking about you. If we say, I know someone who, we might be talking about a fictional character. We might be talking about someone we read about in a study, or we might be someone we have encountered at some point in our lives. But please do not try to guess who we are talking about, because you are probably going to guess wrong. It is not our intention to call out anyone or point fingers at anyone's relationships. We are willing to call out pastors, though, that preach harmful sermons. Such pastors need to be called out, and the techniques that they use to belittle women and to enforce their patriarchy need to be exposed. Calling out bad preaching isn't identifying relationship issues. We do want to protect the identity of individuals, but we feel no such obligation to preachers who make their views public. We will take questions from the chat. Any questions, though, that are asking about a relationship that they may have heard about or that points to a particular person, those kinds of questions will be ignored. So with that caveat, we will get started. Chris has indicated that he has another obligation and he may need to leave early. So we will try to get in his perspective fairly early in the discussion. And if you have any questions for Chris, please ask them early and do not wait to the end. Okay, with that, B, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
I hate talking about myself. Okay. So, my channel, I changed it recently to The Family. It stands for, God, can I remember? I haven't even used it in so long. No, I'm kidding. Promoting healthy and mentally invariable lives every day, everywhere. And the purpose of it is so we can get people together to help each other. Because a lot of people feel isolated, like no one else has their mental condition that they have or any kind of mental issues, be it PTSD, anxiety, whatever it is. So some people feel like they can't connect and that people don't understand them. So the point is to get people to get together, whether on the panel or in the chat, to talk to each other and say, oh, hey, I have that too. We should get together and talk about it. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about myself.
Okay, that's all right. That is perfectly sufficient. Marie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I do a plethora of things, which is a word I learned from watching Three Amigos as a child. You're welcome. I host a podcast called Everyone's Autonomous, which tells the stories of leaving faith and the journeys after that, which are about empowerment, autonomy, self-actualization, and involvement in social justice on this planet. So that's the podcast that I do. And then I also am a life coach for a variety of different things. One of the ones that people usually ask me about is ethical non-monogamy. So I coach people who are interested in that or are frustrated with it or all kinds of things. And then lastly, I have a humanist photography company called Marquee Photo. It's MARKEI, and I volunteer my time to photograph social justice events locally and provide the images for free to organizers. And then I also manage Dave Warnock, which some people know of him, some people don't. He's an atheist. He's been on Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty and talks about dying. He has ALS, so he talks about dying as an atheist, which is really a story about living.
Okay.
It's his birthday today too, I believe.
It is. He's 65. That's
Cool.
why I'm
Well
going to
done.
Nashville on Friday to drink with him.
Excellent.
Okay, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Chris Attlee, also known as the Atheist Pastor. That's how I guess I started on YouTube and in the community before I got doxxed, and then just went, who cares? Here's who I am. So I do a couple of different podcasts. So I've got the Friday Night Six Pack, which is a bit of a community space for the atheist community. It's the theory behind the show is we try and discuss the big issues while having a drink. Unfortunately, when I do it, it's normally in the PM for me and very early in the morning for half my panel, which tends to be from the United States. So it's normally three Aussies getting drunk while a stack of Americans drink coffee and laugh at us. But we do solve a lot of the big issues in the world, which is nice. I've got the Hereticals podcast, which is it's more of a political and social issues podcast. I'm a conservative, so I'm a little bit of a unique sort of character in the community where I don't sort of sit on the left of the political spectrum, but I find that often, or more often than not, whenever I talk to people, we have a lot more in common than against. I think most people agree on social issues. I find that when I say I'm a conservative, it's probably more along the economic lines, but it's always some interesting conversations. And I've also got the Atheist Pastor podcast, which has just started, which is where I talk to people from more of a religious point of view. We have conversations with people in the community, who they are, why they do what they're doing. Now, some of these are new, but most of them are on my channel, which is Atheist Pastor /Hereticals, or also the Atheist Secular Network, Facebook, and about a million other places that I've found myself broadcasting to lately. But I'm a former Christian leader, so I went through, studied Bachelor of Theology. I am a historian, so I'm currently a historian. And yeah, I love talking about anything historical, religious, and just in general, politics, you name it. You can't shut me up generally. So if there's a topic, I've got an opinion on it. Which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't decided yet, but we'll see how it all goes.
Okay.
Look, Chris, I was just thinking, no one has ever told me that. No, that I talk too much or too opinionated. No, it's
look. Most
no
people
else,
on most people who have YouTube channels. I mean, we're all such quiet. We're like church mice. I find.
right. Absolutely.
We're probably going to need everyone in the chat to really poke us to get the conversation going, because I know, and being familiar with everyone here, there's probably not going to be a lot of conversation because none of us have opinions. None of them.
Is that sarcasm, Chris? I can't tell with the accent.
We don't have sarcasm in Australia. We outlawed it years ago.
Okay.
We just start streams and let other people talk.
Exactly. Just to be clear, because I get this a bit, I am not English. I am absolutely not English. Do not call me English. I am Australian. We escaped from England 230 years ago. So
didn't they kick you out?
Well,
so aren't you technically English Australian?
No.
You started out there.
Well, the United States started out as part of England.
I'm just messing with you, Chris. I'm just messing.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, the whole reason that Australia exists is because when you guys had your War of Independence, they had nowhere to send the convicts. So they had these massive prison barges on the Thames River, and they had to send them somewhere. They came across this funny little land in the middle of nowhere and said, they'll hate it there. We'll send them there. Best thing that ever happened. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Island of rebels.
It was for the indigenous. It wasn't too good for the indigenous population, but it's probably the French weren't too far away, so it was 230 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. same wasn't good for the indigenous people. It happens a lot like that.
Hell, when the Saxons invaded England, it wasn't too good for the Anglos there. But anyway, that's another story. Sorry, don't get me started on history. It's otherwise.
Yeah, see where we went. Stop us, Granny, before we go too far.
I was just about to say, let's turn to the topic at hand. Which one of the things that really surprised me when I started looking into this is just how recent the idea of marital rape is. It wasn't illegal in the United States until the 1990s. And there are even today some places in the United States where it is, not everyone agrees as to whether or not it is possible for a person to rape his or her spouse. So that just astounded me. Is the history the same way in Australia, Chris? Do you know?
Yeah, it was the 1980s that was outlawed here. It was one of those things where it hadn't really been an issue in Australia, I believe, but there was a case where it popped up because I guess the government realised there was an anomaly in the law because someone essentially got off with it. Then the law was changed subsequently. So it's in Australia, we're a little bit different to the United States, where 10% of our population is church-going Christian, and out of those, it's probably only really half that follow it, and a very small percentage that would have a fundamentalist interpretation. So we're not an atheist nation, but we are an atheist nation, if that makes sense. We just don't really. Most Australians just don't care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when we see things like that are based on old misinterpretations, and I'll say that because it's the verses that laws like that are based off are absolutely misinterpretations, and I can say that with some authority because I've studied theology and I can even discuss those verses. It is an absolute misinterpretation that was basically designed in an era where arranged marriages or forced marriages were a lot more common. And it was essentially a control mechanism that was put in place hundreds of years ago. I would like to think that we as a society, and when I say we, I guess I'm talking the greater Western society that we're all a part of, I'd like to think that we have moved past that apart from a few probably loud but very insignificant minorities.
Okay. What is the history? How was that verse interpreted? I assume you're talking about the verses that say that a woman must obey her husband, and particularly the verses that say that a woman's body belongs to her husband, and the husband's body belongs to the woman. Correct?
Yeah, and that's more of a, so it's Ephesians 5:22, I think.
The one that the woman's body belongs to man is 1 Corinthians 7. I'll never
Okay.
forget that because I wanted so bad.
Yeah, but I think the following verse to that is, it's basically it's like what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours. That's the actual intent behind it. It's not designed as it's basically it's signifying the union of two people. That it's the two become one, so they're one in the flesh, one in the spirit, one in the flesh, which is the original. And look, I'm saying this talking from a theological point of view. I'm not saying I agree with any of this, but more explaining it. The one where it's women obey is Ephesians. I'm just going to bring it up.
That one's Ephesians.
Yeah.
Chapter 5.
Yeah, so 5:22, and it's something that gets brought out a lot, which is wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. Now, people will grab that, and this is something that used to frustrate us within the church, where people would grab that one verse and build a whole thing around it without looking at the context it was written in or the verses around it, because the verse Ephesians 5:21 is submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So it's the whole purpose of it is to submit to each other, and it gives a stack of rules for, and keeping in mind this is written 2,000 years ago in a very, very different society and world, where men would go out and fight and would need to protect the women in the family in those days. It's certainly when they weren't in the same fortunate society that we're in. So there is a bit of that, but then it goes into a fairly long list of, all right, now that's what the women have to do, or the wives have to do now, husbands honor, obey. And the way that it was described to us in the church, and the way that I used to describe it to others is, okay, that's what it says there, and it's very symbolic. It's something that you've got to look at as you're honoring each other. And one of the biggest thing that was taught to us as men in the church is this isn't a license for you to go out and be the boss and you tell your wife what to do, any of that kind of stuff. It was very much you have to, that's that part of it. You've got the bigger responsibility because you have to honor, you have to protect, you have to sacrifice. And that was really emphasized within the church. And my background was Pentecostal, so which is fairly similar to, I guess, your Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, Church of Christ, things along those. But it's essentially mainstream Protestant, just with a lot of singing and hands in the air and happy people. So that's the way that verse is. So when people like the pastor you were talking about earlier, whose name escapes me and I don't particularly want to know it, when he's saying that's he would have to well know, if he is someone who has studied the Bible, what is around those verses. That's just him being an arsehole. And one thing I'll say, he's not a conservative Christian, he's a fundamentalist Christian, because conservative values are very much just let people do what they want. Okay. That's pure conservative values. Now, I know it's a little bit different in the United States because I think people have labelled themselves conservatives when they're actually far from conservatives. Politics in the US is a bit of an anomaly, actually, as opposed to the rest of the world. So he's definitely fundamentalist. Actually, I'm assuming that's Nathaniel there. Paul didn't write that book. Ephesians is one of the books that was probably written after. So when I say 2,000 years ago, it's probably more like 1,900 years ago or 1,800 years ago, because it's one of the books that's considered to be a forgery of Paul's. But it also gives the insight into it, into the thinking at the time, and certainly how it was originally put out, and the society that it was originally put out for, and the modern society that we live in now, and how it's taught in churches now, I would imagine is very different. And look, people like this NIFB, is it NIFB? Is that it?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's an attention-seeking arsehole. I mean, those churches are very small. They don't have huge. They've got big online followings because they say provocative and controversial things, and really it's all they're doing is they're just reaching out to those those small minded people out there that would follow that, because I can assure you that in the mainstream churches that I were in, if someone had or if I had heard that a member of, I guess, the church I was a part of had been treating their wife in a way where they were sort of the obey, and you'll do as you're told, they would have had, there would have been a lot of us guys who probably would have taken them around the back and had a fairly forceful conversation with them, because it just wasn't tolerated, because that's not how it was. The emphasis that was put on, and I do get that in a lot of contexts, this will seem, sexist or misogynistic, but the emphasis that was put on protecting and honoring women, that was what that was all about. It wasn't about, I'm the boss and you'll do as I'm told. When I got married, and we were married under, as Christians, and sorry, I will shut up in a second. This is what happens when I drink coffee. So we got married under those circumstances. I remember part of the vows, Melissa said, part of it was that she would obey my leadership, and it was very biblical. And I remember her mother at the time, she was really against that, because neither of us came from Christian families, and we sort of had to explain, look, it's more of a symbolic traditional thing. But I can assure you, even though we lived under that for essentially 11 years theoretically, I can assure you there was never a single time where I made the decision and that was final, or I would have even thought that was okay, because it was just, it isn't how. That's not how what that verse is actually meant to represent, or certainly in the church in a modern sense, that's not how that verse is interpreted.
Okay, very good. Okay. I want to stop just for a moment to say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, Julie. Hello, Mama Atheist. Hello, daughter. Junk Shop. Hello, Lissy. Math Pig. Very stable milking stool. Aunt Jer. Robin is here, and I know Robin is here in and out. Tim Walters is here, and Tim Walters is a new subscriber as of just a few minutes ago. So it's very nice to have you here as well. Let's see, who have I missed? Divine Disbelief. I was going to send you an invitation to the stream, and I thought, no, Divine Disbelief wouldn't come to my my stream. Yes, I will make sure I invite you directly next time. And Ricardo. I almost missed Ricardo Oliveira is here, and Bad Tempered Badger. Did I miss anybody? Purple Rhymes with Orange is here, and Mr. Shadow Kitty. I think that's everyone. So we have
there's some really cool names in the atheist community, isn't there?
Yes, there are.
You know what? If people can say a lot of things about us, but damn, we're creative.
Robin,
well, of course, we have to be creative. We don't have the Bible as a crutch.
Well, I know. It's since we don't have imaginary friends, we've got that little bit of that extra brain we can use for creativity. It's great.
Mm.
Right. Oh, and Gracie is here now. Gracie says we can start now.
Oh, good. Should I go back and do my 10-minute rant again?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Gracie missed the whole thing.
Yeah. I have attended churches that have said this, and now they are obviously not quite as disgusting as the NIFB church, and they do try to make it palatable by saying that, yes, women are supposed to obey their husbands, but men are supposed to be loving their wives sacrificially, and they're supposed to be putting their wives' interests ahead of their own. And if a man is putting your interests ahead of his own and he's treating you like you're more important than he is, then why wouldn't you submit? I mean, he's doing what's best for you. Marie, you had a rather strong reaction to that statement. What's on your mind?
It just sounds really kinky. There are people who structure their relationships intentionally this way because it works for them sexually. Like this whole master slave thing. This is a kink. This is a kink.
Okay. How about you, B? What's your thoughts?
Oh my God, it's so complicated.
Okay.
I have known people, actually, I have a member of my family who has been with the same person for 30 some odd, 31, 32 years now. Used to be that, oh, he's my husband, I need to listen to him thing. And it just killed me because she's such a good person. But thankfully, about 4 years ago, she started standing up to him. And it really pissed him off. And they fight a lot now. But she has a say in everything. So they're still together, still seem generally happy. He doesn't get his way all the time anymore, so he's not quite as happy as he used to be. But it's just a horrible thing to watch. It's horrible to see someone so intelligent and so kind-hearted. I mean, she volunteers in the community to help like troubled teens and kids that are addicted to drugs and stuff, like volunteers her time. She's that good of a person. And she's one of the few people I know that actually can fit under the label of Christian and is actually a good example of what they all should be. And I love her for that. So it's hard to watch someone to really go through that, and you just can't do anything, you know? You can't, I mean, you could talk to them, you can suggest, but it's just like you have a friend that's dating someone and you see the bad parts of the person and they don't see it yet, and you say, oh, you got to watch that. And then they say, oh, no, everything's fine. They're not going to listen until they're ready to listen. And you have to give them time to realize part of it on their own. And then once the ball's rolling, you can help them with it. But everybody, pretty much everybody I've ever met has been like that. So it's just difficult to watch. Most of the time, all the people I've met, they're all really good people. And it's just horrible to see that. Kills me.
But you just brought up the one point that I wanted to address more than anything else. And that is, I know someone that was in a relationship like that for many years as well. And this person didn't see how awful it was. You know, this person only saw that, hey, you know, this is what God wants for me. And if I'm suffering, you know, God says there's suffering in this world. So, you know, that's okay. What, and I want everyone on the panel to answer this question is, what would you say to a person that that they should look for to tell that they are in a relationship of this type?
That's a long list. There's a lot of things that can happen. I mean, it goes from someone, and I've seen this a lot. I see it at work. Someone's at the store and their significant other is the husband or whatever boyfriend is calling. What are you doing? Oh, I'm at the store. I'll be leaving in like 30 minutes. Oh, I need to hear him answer the phone again. You know, stuff like that. Constant texting. The wife saying, "Oh, I got to go home. I don't want him to get mad." Like, those are a lot of the obvious things that people just don't realize that they're doing in front of other people. That makes it, you know, it's just that's the first thing I can think of.
Okay, Marie, what would you say?
Yeah, I've got a little notepad so that while I'm listening to people, I don't forget my own thoughts too. 3 things came up for me.
Notes?
Oh, I take notes. I have a
I'm just kidding, Maria. I'm sorry.
Flighty brain. 3 things that stick out to me in no particular order other than they showed up in my brain is that the thing where a partner blames the other partner for the feelings that they have.
Okay.
So they assign responsibility to an external party for the feelings that they have within their unit of flesh. So not owning their feelings is a red flag. Secondly, I would say disproportionate freedom. So trying to imagine yourself asking to do X, Y, Z, and then anticipating a particular answer and then flipping it and thinking, well, what if that partner asked me if they could do X, Y, Z? Would I also say, no, you can't? Like, so is there a reciprocity in freedom, as it were, or is one partner controlling the other partner in their movement, like you were mentioning with the texting and stuff, while they're out and about. And then that to me then drills into another flag, which I think is distrust. Does your partner trust you? And if they don't, then what are you doing here? If you're in the relationship to ease their to reassure them that you can be trusted, then is that a relationship? So those are my three thoughts.
Okay.
Well, it's a dysfunctional one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what are your thoughts?
See, it's hard. And something I think we've always got to remember is we're only ever seeing a part of a relationship. What we're not seeing is what goes on behind closed doors. So, it's what you see on the surface. It could be very, very different. So I think we always need to be careful that I think there's that good balance between minding our own business and not getting involved and intervening where it's necessary. I can think of examples where I've got friends who, in my opinion, are in controlling and somewhat abusive relationships, and it can be very hard to not intervene because sometimes, I think one I'm thinking of off the top of my head, were I to intervene in that, all that is likely to happen, and when I say I'm not talking physically abusive, it's more emotionally abusive and manipulation, things that I see that possibly they don't see happening in the relationship. Now, were I to intervene, all that happens is I'm out of that life. That's I'm no longer able to be involved and no longer able to be there for that person, and potentially you can make a bad situation worse. I think where things like that happen, it's important to have good support groups around. But look, you're just saying to someone, I think you're in an abusive relationship, isn't going to make them necessarily go, oh, you're right. Yeah, I'm out of it. So you've got to be mindful there. I think it's also to remember that there can be control going on both sides. I know, and I've got a friend, a very good friend of mine. We were in church together. He's fortunately out of the church now. When they were out in public, him and his wife, he was very much the man. He was, we'll get this, we'll do that. And she'd sort of smile and go on. Behind closed doors, it was a completely different scenario, to the point where she was actually verbally and physically abusive to him. So that's why I think it's important to remember we're only ever seeing a part of the relationship that is on show. Another example, I guess a more prominent example that probably everyone knows, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, the things that have come out in that relationship. Now, initially when she came out, he was the bad guy. He was this horrible person. He was getting cancelled left, right, and center. But then what's been revealed subsequently, and certainly this isn't a commentary on an ongoing case, and I'm not making any opinions for obvious liability reasons. What's come out subsequently presents a very different scenario in that relationship, and certainly not the one that was presented on the outside. So I think it's all, and especially within the Christian world, because there is that little bit of sexism, I guess, or not a little bit, there's sexism in the Bible, but within just a fraction. Obviously how that's portrayed in a modern context varies from area to area, church to church, different cultures, societies, and so on. But there certainly is that need for people within Christianity to present themselves as I'm the strong, powerful man, and I'm the nice, submissive wife. That's not always necessarily how that relationship works. I probably presented myself in that manner when I was in church, and I can assure you my relationship is far from that. In fact, it could be reversed. I know Lissy Lou's, I saw her in the chat before, so I'm going to make sure I say nice things about her because fear and everything. But it's I think we have to be mindful of that, and we also have to be mindful of different things. And I guess there's what's called love languages. Different people show and appreciate different, love in different ways. So some people, like to
Acts.
there's different things. So we're all different. I think like Marie was saying, we've all got our thing. And every relationship's different. I think where there's problems in relationships is where we all try to conform to the norm, because the norm, if the norm works for you, power to you. But I don't think the norm should be the norm.
Okay. We have a
I agree with
question
that.
from Junk Shop Library who asks, where do you draw the line between a controlling and abusive relationship, barring, of course, actual physical abuse? That is a very good question.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
First of all, a controlling relationship is an abusive relationship, because that person doesn't have any freedoms. They're not trusted. They're not respected. If you don't have the basics of a relationship, which is trust, respect, and communication, you probably don't have a good relationship. And it's probably, if it's going beyond that and that person loses all of that to the other person, that is abusive. There's different levels of abuse, but I still say that's abusive, even just controlling someone.
Marie, did you have any additional thoughts on that?
I mean, my thoughts go back to the very, very first question that you asked, which is, what are those signs that a relationship might have a disproportionate power hierarchy? And it comes, and I'm always very cautious to label things. At least I think I am. I'll prove myself wrong shortly, I'm sure. But I certainly don't really feel like answering that in a black and white way about what's abusive, where is the line. There is no line. If someone asked me that, I would be like, well, who are we talking about? And then, and then I would ask, and I would call that person. I'd be like, hey, how's your relationship going? And I would ask, and I would try to find out. Like, I'm cautious to label those kinds of things, but generally, it's like what you all have been saying, that the relationship should be one that is egalitarian, that is both people are opting into it, that if there is any power in play, that is an agreed upon power. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't making fun of these kinks. These are real kinks of power hierarchy in relationships. So if there's a power hierarchy, that should be something that's agreed upon by partners. But otherwise, my default is that relationships should always be egalitarian, and everyone should have as much freedom as the other one to bring up issues, to ask for things. Everyone should have a seat at the table in the relationship to discuss things and not be silenced, that their voice matters just as much as the other person's voice. And so if you find yourself thinking about your own relationship and feel this kind of pump of adrenaline in your stomach, when you think about sitting down at the table with your partner and bringing up something that had been bothering you, that might be a sign of something, maybe not necessarily abuse, maybe just feeling unsafe in your relationship because you need to work on being assertive, but it could also be indicative of an abusive or controlling relationship. It's hard to say. But yeah, just in general, I see it that way, that it should be something egalitarian unless otherwise agreed upon.
Okay. Chris, did you have any thoughts on the question? Do you remember what the question was? Should I go find it again?
I do. No, I remember. I remember. Where's that line? Look, it's purely situational. It's purely situational, because what can be a line for one person may not be a line for another person. It could be a case of there's, it's what people are happy with in the relationship. As bizarre as it might sound to some of us, I know people who are very happy to have that kind of a hierarchical, that traditional 1950s style relationship. Now, it wouldn't work for me necessarily, but if it works for people, it works for people. I mean, relationships, the way I view it is, it's two people coming together and agreeing to what's going to work for them. Now, if what works for them is not what works for us, or if it seems strange to other people, well, that's what works for them. As far as the abuse side of things, I guess getting back to my earlier point, it's hard because you've got to be careful. You don't want to cross that line where you can do more damage, or you can find yourself excluded from that person's life where you can't help or make a difference. So short answer is it's purely based on the circumstances, situational.
Okay.
Can I add another
can
thing?
I add to that?
Oh, B, you go first. We both had extra thoughts. You go.
So one of the things I've seen happen is in severely controlling relationships, the husband, and I've seen this happen like 3 times in my life, which is probably not a lot, but to me it is, where the husband finds out someone has talked to the wife about possible relationship issues. And this is what scares me, is when they find out, they go home and abuse the wife and then tell the person, stay the fuck out of our lives. It's none of your damn business what's going on. And then when they ask the wife's so scared of them. Yeah, we talked about it. And I've seen that happen. And it's kind of like Chris said, you have to decide how far into that person's relationship you should stick your nose. Because sometimes helping can be too much. Sometimes helping can cause more problems.
Right.
And really quickly,
because
vice
people that
versa.
are really controlled, their partner's gonna find out that someone talked to them. All they have to do is push them. Who'd you talk to today? What'd you do today? Ooh, and they're gonna tell.
I was just going to really quickly say that's also, and possibly because I have more conversations with guys than girls about relationships, that happens from the other perspective as well. It's.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I guess I just want to make sure that, and I know that it's, in the big scheme of things, it's probably balanced. It's not balanced. It's more to one side. But I do want to acknowledge that there are men who find themselves in that situation, and certainly not diminish the experience that they have as well. And if there's any men that are in that situation out there, I just want you to know that it's not uncommon, and don't be afraid to reach out and talk to someone.
Okay.
And real quick before you go, Maria, I just want to clarify one thing. I made that sound like I was pointing out just one person, but being that I'm in the gay community, I've seen it man to man. I've seen it woman to woman. Okay. So it's not, I feel like it is more common for men to control women because of the way our society has been built towards that. But it does happen all the time. I've had a couple of exes that mentally abused me, and it took me a long time to realize, oh my God, what the hell am I doing right now? What's going on? So no, it does happen everywhere. And thank you for pointing that out, Chris. That's totally fair.
I've read that when men are in abusive relationships, that a lot of times it is far more difficult for them to reach out for help, because at least when a woman reaches out for help, she gets sympathy. But when a man reaches out for help, he usually gets shamed.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're seen as weak, and you're not a real man, all that kind of garbage. And it's something that, fortunately, it's something that's being spoken about more frequently now, and it's something that's being brought to light. And I absolutely don't want to diminish because it's a problem that happens on both sides, and I think from what I can see, it seems to be, or certainly it's a lot more reported that women are generally the victims of this. But I think that the statistics probably don't indicate the reality of it, because there are a lot of men in that situation, and it is a shame thing. It's like male survivors of sexual abuse, where it's perpetrated by a female. You only have to have a look at the way that. Sorry, I just want to word this in a way where I don't upset or offend anyone. If you look at where teenagers or school children have had relationships with teachers, if it's a male teacher perpetrating it on a child, they're a rapist, they're a this, they're a that, they're everything. Where it's a female, the amount of times that you see, oh, gee, I wish that happened to me in school. Oh, what's he complaining about? It takes away from the reality. And because of things like that, men are afraid to step forward. They won't report things. It's where they're in abusive relationships. Like I said, my friend who I was talking about earlier, they'd go out in public and everyone thought, oh, he's the boss. They're a good Christian relationship. She was verbally abusing him. She was hitting him. She was like, it was just complete. if it had have been the other way around, he would be in jail right now. I'll put it that way. But because she was smaller and petite, he was he'll probably never see this, and no one would know who he is anyway. But he was a big guy, like a big strong guy. Like in a physical altercation, it would only go one way. But because of that dynamic, it was just people would never have known, and he never came forward about it. And even when they separated and she went and said all this horrible stuff about him that was completely not true and was proven not true, it was people just didn't bat an eyelid. And that's so common. Well, no, it's not so common, but it's a lot more common than you would think. And I guess because I was in a position where I was talking to men, and I still do. I still talk to men. I'm part of a lot of support groups and for a variety of different things. I guess I've been more exposed to it, but it is, yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Sorry, because I thought Marie was going to talk before.
Well, yeah, and the phrase I want to insert here is that patriarchy hurts us all. Because patriarchy is hurting men.
It depends on your definition of patriarchy. I think where we're talking like that, the traditional tyrannical style, yeah, but I don't.
Well, patriarchy hurts men in these scenarios where they're being abused by women, because why is it? I need to bake on that.
It's more of a matriarchal issue.
No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. There is no matriarchy. Men are in charge of everything. But in a smaller situation, in the individual relationship, yes, there's a power issue. But we're all socialized by our genders, and so how we're socialized by our genders plays out into these scenarios. And so for young men who are raped by older women to be high-fived is playing into this toxic masculinity narrative and thus robbing men.
That I agree to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say, that it hurts men. It hurts men because they won't speak up about their abuse because of toxic masculinity, of being dismissed, like people in the chat are saying, like you're saying. So it hurts all of us in different ways and different portions and to different extents. That's all I was trying to say with that, but hadn't really fully articulated it yet. And this is a little bit less relevant than what we're talking about now, but to kind of go back to the thought that I had before about where is the line when a relationship becomes abusive, I again just want to reiterate my thought on it being mildly arbitrary, not entirely arbitrary, but mildly. Whereas for example, if I was to tell someone, my husband sleeps with different people, like other than me. I'm married and my husband sleeps with other people. And people are going to say, is it consensual? Are you consenting in this? And I'm like, yes. And then they're going to say they're going to say, does it hurt you? And I'll say, yes. So is it abusive? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying there's some weird nuance here about do-it-yourself relationships where the freedom within a relationship can be seen as toxic or abusive. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's messy, and a lot of it is about perspective. And like what you're all saying, like we can't see what's happening inside these relationships and what's working for them and what's not. For me, it's working. For me, the hurt is something that I agree to because I think his bodily autonomy is more important than my feelings of possession. And so I own the hurt and I deal with the hurt, and it has nothing to do with him. So I think it's a weird example, but I'm just trying to say there's this weird nuanced space around this that can be difficult to dissect.
But shouldn't he respect your feelings too?
No. No, because he has bodily autonomy.
Well, yeah, he does have bodily autonomy. It should be his choice, no question. But
yeah.
But shouldn't, if he loves you and cares about you, wouldn't he make the choice that is going to make you happy too?
No, I certainly am not married for him. Yeah.
So when the relationship started, were you aware that he felt like this and you agreed to carry on with the relationship?
No, I was the one that brought it up. No, I'm just saying that sometimes you choose to have a certain type of freedom in your relationship, and just because it hurts doesn't mean it's bad, and just because it hurts doesn't mean you should stop. You know, like if you really believe in the freedom of the other person, if you're jealous when they go out with their guy, people are jealous all the time. You're spending too much time with your guy friends in the basement playing video games.
Absolutely.
How is this different? Like, oh, he doesn't respect your feelings. He should hang out with you all day long. Why are you not? You know what I mean? Like, so there's this weird line there. And so it's kind of up to interpretation for each relationship about what are the values. And I believe someone in the chat said that something like each relationship should decide what their relationship is about. It should be a DIY, do-it-yourself relationship. You agree on the dynamic, and we agree on bodily autonomy. I didn't agree to not feel feelings about it. I agreed to a value system, and I agreed to handle my feelings that I have about it. If I'm jealous that he's in the basement with all of his guy friends playing video games all night, I need to fucking deal with that, because he has freedom to enjoy his life however he wants, and I need to take care of my needs by going out and going to a brewery or whatever. Like, you know, like otherwise it can feed into this codependent type of relationship where you need to entertain me all the time.
And then it turns controlling, because that's what that is. It's it might be on the lower part of the scale and it hasn't got excessive yet, but it's still controlling. Just if somebody wants, I mean, if somebody's going out all the time and they're ignoring you, that's just a bad relationship. But if they're going out a couple nights a week or something with their buddies and you see them all week after work, my God, what do you want? They should be able to go have fun. You know, do what you want, man.
I think it's important to remember that society has wedged us into this, what a relationship should be. You know, It should be the man and the woman. It should be, you know, all these traditional things. But the reality is, as a species, that's not necessarily how we evolved. If you have a look at different cultures throughout the world, monogamy isn't always the norm. In fact, there's societies throughout the world where it's just there's no set relationships, or traditionally, because I think, unfortunately, society has wedged everyone into this one kind of way of living. But there's traditional societies where what would happen is there could be a child, and any male in the tribe could have been the father of that child, because it was just a very open system, and the entire tribe would then take that child on and look after that child as if it was their own. So I mean, this whole single family unit dynamic and single relationship dynamic, it's not for everyone. And I think one of the challenges, and Marie's probably the better person to speak on this, because obviously, you know, this is you coach people in this, but my understanding would be that because we've been so wedged into this traditional, we're still trying to work out how some of these relationships work. There's no guidebook for, I guess, you know, polyamorous relationships, I would imagine. It would be very much okay, how does this work? There's the stigma attached to it, so I would imagine it would be significantly harder to find people in that same situation. And certainly you would also have the I guess the view of, or the attitude that would be displayed towards that. You know, I know that you know, there's laws against people having, you know, multiple marriages, you know, to the point where, you know, people you know, a lot of those fundamentalist LDS people are jailed for, you know. My attitude is, as much as I don't like the fundamentalist LDSs, you know, well, the people are fine. It's just that the religion I don't like. Why do we need to dictate what works for other people? I mean, you know what? And I look at it this way: your relationship's a relationship. If that works for you, and obviously feelings do get involved, but you've found a way to manage that. You know, it's a situation where either of you could say, no, this is too much, I'm walking away. You've chosen not to do that. So obviously it's something, that's the dynamic that works for you.
Yep.
I hate this whole everyone wanting to, and it just gets back to the whole religious control. And it is a religious control on how everyone should live. And, you know, I take my hat off to you, but I've got bad hair under here at the moment. But you know what? It's the old saying, you do you.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a really good question in the chat right now. Does the panel believe that men should have the choice to opt out of fatherhood as women do with motherhood?
Yes, 100% yes.
Of
Was that a debate?
course.
Like,
Of
I didn't know that
course.
was a thing.
As in
Well-
bodily
Oh,
autonomy.
are you talking about emotionally or financially?
I think just
assume-
making
would-
babies
That's
or
what I
not.
need to know.
I would
No, I'm
interpret
saying the
that
person in the chat, do they mean emotionally or financially? Are you talking about being in the child's life, or she has a child and you don't want to pay for it?
Like, if you made a
that's two different
baby, I
things.
think you're obligated. But if you don't want to make babies and you're opting out of fatherhood, yeah, go for it.
I think that
Yeah,
might have
snip
been
it, baby.
I have seen that question posed before. I think the actual, and apologies if I'm wrong in understanding what that question's about, is where a woman's pregnant, opting to terminate, a man having the right to opt to terminate the pregnancy. The answer is no.
Yeah.
I was wondering if maybe that's where he was going with that.
I've seen that. I've seen that before in a lot of the, especially with my involvement in politics. That's a common pro-life, pro-choice quandary that gets put up, and then the follow-up question is, well, if that's the case, and then why should the man be forced to pay? Look, we have different, makeups down there. But okay, so sorry, emotionally, physically, financially, physically, yeah, you make the baby, you're a father, and you bloody own up to it. The only exception being where it's an arrangement of a sperm donation, something like that. Different story. Where there's a practical agreement before, but no parent should ever abandon a child, mother, father. You know what? If you when we all have the fun, we all know what the potential could be. And if you want to make that choice as a man, and you find that you become a father, well, then you do the right thing. And that's not a sexist thing. It's men, women, parents should always do the right thing by children. Children are the one group in society that needs to be protected, loved, and looked after above all others.
I agree 100%. I have met some people in my life who they were together. She got pregnant. He said, I really don't want to have kids, and she kind of started seeing more of one in particular. Started seeing more about this guy, and like, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't want him to be a father. And so they mutually agreed that he would go on with his life, she would go on with hers, and he gives her child support. They did it through the courts, so it's legal, and he has to keep up with it because she demanded that. But sometimes it works out better like that. They move on, they find someone who's happier, someone who loves that child and doesn't see the child as a burden. And that father still throws money at the mother every month saying, here, take care of my kid. Because if you want to duck out physically, you should never duck out financially. Because I'm telling you, I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and for years, my mom got $150 a month of child support. I know what that's like. I didn't care that the asshole was gone. I hated that my mother had to work 2 jobs when I was a teenager to try to pay the bills. It's messed up. It never should have happened like that. So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, it can be
Sometimes it
situational,
works.
but I think that even in that circumstance, my concern would be, well, it might be in the best interest of the adult, but what's in the best interest of the child?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, now if some people don't want the children,
it is situational,
and they see that children, they see that child as a burden or a pain in the ass or whatever, it's probably best that they're not around the child. The mental damage they could do to that child by the time the child's an adult, and that child thinks they're worthless, they don't mean anything, nobody cares about them because dad ignored them their whole lives. I mean, I had problems with that. My dad was around me till I was 8. He didn't give a shit. It was just another mouth to feed. Like, there's that one, And so that kind of messed me up for a few years. And the thing to save me from it was my mother was amazing. So I was lucky like that. Not everybody has that kind of a mother that has that strength to overcome that crap and get the child to move
Hmm.
on from it. So
There was a comment
I guess
quite a while ago that I had wanted to get to, and I didn't get a chance to. So I'm going to go back to it now, even though we've kind of gotten away from this topic. And that is, rape is about power. No, and I think that's a really good point. That when we look at the religious standpoint, they keep looking at it from a sexual standpoint. That supposedly the man is supposed to be in charge of the woman's body because he's allowed to enjoy her sexually, but if he is not getting consent, it's really not about a sexual relationship, it's about a power trip.
I think it's
absolutely.
situational.
Okay.
I think it's I think there's always a power dynamic involved. I think we just see, and I might be being ultra cautious here because it's my worry is that I just don't want to generalize too much on these things, because the last thing I want to do is upset anyone and have them think that their experience not out of the norm. I'm really struggling to find the words for this, but I think we've just got to be careful not to generalize.
Okay, good point.
I agree with that.
It's pretty rare.
Go ahead,
I'm
Marie.
stuck for words to
Hear the gears.
Marie?
I've never raped anyone, so I don't know why I would do it. So but from the things that I've read, it can be about power, and at the same time, the nuance that I'm kind of exploring in my mind at the moment is that I have been in situations where I wasn't raped. However, something happened, and it had to do with, retrospectively now I can see it, that it had to do with a lack of education around communication in sexual scenarios. And so I can look back and count numerous events where I did not actively consent to what was happening, nor did really my partner. We were just kind of like fumbling around, and like, I didn't know I could say no. I didn't know I could say, can you change this? I didn't know a lot of things. And so what I'm saying is not directed at people who have actively been raped. So I'm just kind of exploring this weird space in the middle. So please don't interpret it that way. But I'm just saying that whether we're monogamous or not, we are typically not educated in how to have a sexual relationship, how to dialogue about that, how to build consent together. So people are just fumbling around, and then you have the educational system neglecting to teach us anything about sex except don't do it, or wear a condom, or no means no, which is just not enough. Just not enough. We need to be talking about interpersonal communication skills, being assertive, the skills of negotiation, the skills of self-awareness, the skills of reading body language. And without that, a lot of weird shit could happen, and it can get a little muddy there. And so that's just kind of a weird nuance that I wanted to explore within this realm of I don't know if it's related to rape at all, but it's kind of a muddy area.
Yeah. Tim had a follow-up comment that I think is also, brings up some more gray area. He says, find it hard to imagine a rape where dominance wasn't the goal. And I do know of a situation where dominance wasn't really the goal, because it wasn't so much forcible as it was coercion. And, it was a case where she said no, and he said, I think I can make you want it. And it's more that, he's trying to coerce her rather than force her. And so it wasn't so much about dominance as it was about, I think I can do this. And she knows he can't, but.
Well, isn't that what men are taught? Like,
Yeah.
That's an old narrative about women needing to be the coy one. Like, we know we want it, but it's our role in the gender game to be like, no, I can't. I shouldn't. Oh, no, I won't. You're such a tease.
Oh, wait a
Don't
minute.
stop.
I'll play the guy. Oh, come on, baby. You know you wanna. Come
See?
on.
And then she
That's
just
what they
keeps
all.
on
That's what.
teasing.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
watched that happen
absolutely.
in a movie from the late 80s. I watched Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, and there's a scene in there with Rosie. I can't remember her last name, but he did not take. She said no many, many times, and he kept on bugging her, and it was making me really like he went overboard. And eventually, they ended up having sex, and it seemed like she enjoyed it. But like, like that's what media is telling women and men and people of all genders in terms of expectations for roles. And so if men have internalized that narrative and women have internalized that narrative, and we're talking about a heterosexual relationship here, I acknowledge that, then that's how that shit's going to happen. It's just going to play itself over again and again.
That's one of the things I really hate about the classic movies, like the 1950 movies. They almost always end with, the woman saying no and the man grabbing her and kissing her hard, and then she melts in his arms, and yeah.
Oh, yes. The conversations I've had to have with my daughter about some old movies that are very uncomfortable, and sort of having to explain, this is not how things happen, and this isn't cool, and things that it never occurred to me. But as watching them back now certainly through a modern set of eyes, it's just like, whoa, this is not cool. This is like, this hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
It's...
Or we've aged better.
Disney
How about that?
movies.
I'm going to go with that.
Cinderella, the prince meets her and takes one look at her, and I gotta have her, and she's mine. And
it's also very classist.
Yeah.
Well, Snow White, a prince just comes along and kisses a sleeping woman.
Yeah. A dead sleeping woman. She was like consensual. Dead. She was in a fucking coffin. What the fuck?
Yes.
They have a word for that. I believe it's necrophilia.
Necrophilia.
Yeah.
Yes.
But sure, let's put that in a kid's movie.
That's some sick shit. I'm just saying. I mean, in
watch
my
that
opinion,
with your kid and be like,
sure
"Hey, kiddo, you want to go to the fucking what's it called where dead people are, and go hang out there and pretend the morgue, and just kiss a bunch of people."
Oh. So I want to say one thing really quick. Santi the Sane said, B does that really well.
He said what?
So I'm going to explain why I do that so well. Because in my life, I've been approached by over a dozen men saying I'm gay because I haven't had the right dick. The right guy hasn't fucked me yet.
Oh,
and then I proceed to tell them, you're the reason I'm gay. It's people like you. But that's not really the truth. I just
what do they actually expect? You're going to go, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, please come into my bedroom now and show me.
Yeah. Okay,
how fucking dumb are these people?
No, you know what I usually tell them? I'll be totally honest. This is really what I tell them. If you're getting in bed with me, you're going to be the bitch, not me. And they go, fuck, no, I'm not. All right, then you go find another woman besides me, and I'll go find a woman.
You know what? The reason they're not gay is because they haven't had the right dick. So maybe they need to go and find,
Yes.
Maybe that's what I told
them.
Yes.
I have a brother that's gay, and no, everybody, it's not Richard. Somebody you guys don't know. I have a brother that's gay, and he said to me, no one knows how to suck a dick like a guy. Makes sense to me. You know what feels good. You know where the good spots are. Same thing with women. So yeah, that's what they need to go. Maybe they should go try that. Maybe that's why they're not gay. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm sorry. Guys. I hope you didn't spit any of that out, Marie, because I saw you like really I was like, trying to not. I mean, I'm really impressed it didn't come out your nose. So good job.
That would hurt.
Yeah, well done.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I got drunk with a guy one time because I was sad and I was alone and miserable, and he was consoling me, and I woke up and then 9 months later had a child. So, it's, and the problem was, this is what blows my mind about it, how times have changed. Okay. Times have changed so much that it wasn't considered rape back then. I was drinking with him. I was alone with him. He was in my apartment. I let him in. So I never thought about it being rape until I was 28, 29, 30 years old, somewhere in there. And I was discussing with someone how their friend was raped, and I was consoling them. And she said the situation, and I went, wait, holy shit, that's what happened to me. He fucking raped me. So, mind blown.
Exactly.
Because that's what society said. It was always the woman's fault. The woman, you shouldn't have put yourself in that situation. You shouldn't have tempted him. You shouldn't have showed so much tit at the bar. You shouldn't wear a short skirt. You shouldn't flirt. You should. Oh my God, the list goes on and on. So let's just make, no offense, Chris, because I know you're not that guy, but let's just make all men not culpable. It's fine. You can do whatever you want, and we'll throw the woman out of the society. Damn her. Damn her. Yeah.
I can't tell you how good it's felt to find partners to explicitly ask for consent.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Marie?
I can't tell you how refreshing and wonderful and beautiful and absolutely pure it is to find partners who explicitly ask for consent for things, specifically male partners. They can be taught. We don't have to keep doing this shit. There's a way to get drunk and enjoy having sex with a partner where it's not rape. We can talk about these things. We can seek consent. We can talk. Oh, I do have a story. Can I tell a story? Or do we have to move on to another? Okay.
No, go ahead.
So I just finished reading this book series called King Killer by Patrick Rothfuss or some shit. And it's about like this Iron Age, enthusiastic consent. It's about this guy in like the Iron Age who's got like magic powers and stuff. And he travels the world to kind of find his fortune, whatever. And he lands in this community of people, the Amir, and they're very different. They don't use facial expressions. They express their feelings through hand gestures, because facial expressions, the emotion is too intimate to be sharing just willy-nilly with anyone. And so it's all in the hands of expressing. And so while he's in the community, he's going around and like women, without getting into too much detail about who these people are, like women would go up to him and be like, hey, you want to fuck? I'm feeling kind of horny. I got a little downtime today. And he's like, what? Who are you? What is that? And he's very confused about this very casual approach to sexuality. And then another day he's walking around with his lute. He's got this little lute that he plays. He's a musician. He's like the best musician ever. And someone sees him and they grab him. They're like, put that fucking away. Put it away. And he's like, what the hell? Why can't I have my lute? They're like, you are a whore. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so they explain that in their culture, instead of sex being that intimate, private thing, it's music. Because they place such a value on emotional intimacy, and music, if anything, like that's such an emotional, it lasts for minutes and it's so emotional. And so they're like, you play that lute in front of crowds of people. You don't even care who they are. You do it in front of them all, and they pay you. You are a whore. But meanwhile, they're like, yeah, of course, if you're horny, just have sex. Like, whatever. Go find someone who's interested and just go and do it. And like, it has nothing to do with love or like can and it can't. It's just sex. And so I loved reading that book and seeing like a real life example of a culture that chose something else to be that sacred, intimate thing. Because it is just that arbitrary. It is part of our socialization, and it could be anything else. It could be music. It could be playing music, because they had musicians that would come into the town. It's like, it's not that they hated music, but they're like, you hire those musicians to come into your home. and they have to play behind a screen because it's just so intimate. And singing to your partner is something incredibly intimate. And so I'm just saying, it's all arbitrary. Like, once you explore different ways of viewing the world, like, you can decide whether you want sex to mean that for you. It doesn't have to, though.
I think you've just changed karaoke for me forever. I just want to say that.
You slut.
Yeah, from now on, he's just going to go up naked and sing.
It
Doesn't matter. It's all about the emotions.
It's funny something that you said there, Maria. It's interesting, and I guess I'll give a male perspective on it. And sort of mention how in this story that the guy was really taken back when a woman said, "Well, do you want to go? Let's go." And I remember that happening to me years and years ago, and being in that situation where I'd sort of having a conversation pretty early on with her, and she was forward like that, and I genuinely and look, my end goal was I thought that she was really attractive. I was in my 20s, we were out, and certainly I was hoping it might lead somewhere. I didn't know how to react. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? So it's interesting that you sort of, it just goes to show how we're trained to respond. How it's meant to be the man pursuing, and that we're always taught. You go up, if you're interested, you buy them a drink, you chat them up, you see how it goes. Man, that is so antiquated now. It's and I'm a bit older, and I've been married for a long time anyway. So, but yeah, it was. I remember having that very direct approach, and it scared the shit out of me. It was a good night. It was a good night.
I would love to. I think honestly, that is awesome. I think everybody should be like that. Okay, let me give you an example. Where I work, I'm going to make this really quick because we're kind of off topic. Where I work, we have thieves come in. I mean, anywhere retail you have thieves. So these thieves come in, they try to act like they're not stealing. They carry money in their hand to show they have money. Nobody does that when they're really shopping, by the way, just saying. So they're about to steal. So you pretend like you're not following them, and then they pretend like they're not going to steal, and then you still pretend like you're not following. It's ridiculous. So I walk up to people, and they walk in the door, they say, "Hi, how are you?" I'm like, "Good. If you need help find anything, let me know. If you're going to steal, just leave now." "Oh, you think I'm going to steal?" "Yeah, I kind of do." "Why? Because I'm homeless?" "Yes, because everybody that's homeless that walks, literally 99.88888 people that walk on our door. I have met one person that was homeless that never stole from us. One. And they come in every day. So yeah, I think you're going to steal." They get all offended. I'm like, "I'll just leave then." Why can't we be honest? Why can't we just be forthright with each other? If people were more honest and more forthright and said what they thought, and you don't have to be a dick about it, but you could say it tactfully. If everybody did that, could you imagine how our communications would go from here to here and how much better this world would be? It would be incredible. But everybody's afraid to offend somebody, or I might say something wrong, or I don't want people to look at me badly. I'm at that place in my life. I know I'm not trying to be an asshole here, but I know I'm an awesome person. I know I am. I know I care about people. I know I do things for other people. I know I want to have a direction in my life where I can help people. So I know I'm a good person, and I've learned to love myself. So somebody says you're a bitch or you're what? Okay, you can have your opinion. Fuck off. Don't care. I literally don't care. So I think everybody needs to find that confidence. Everybody needs to build up and love yourself, and then we can all just have better conversations because we don't have to worry about that shit anymore. We can just be honest with each other. That's what we need to do.
The 90s movie with Jim Carrey, Liar, Liar, where he can only be honest.
Yes.
So that popped up. I haven't seen that movie for years. It was a great movie. You're right, though.
You can call me Jim Jr. because the truth just falls out of my mouth sometimes. I literally have to bite I'm not going to say that right now.
That kind of brings us back
because it will.
That kind of brings us back to the original topic, which I would then put the question: do you think that being religious or being involved in the Christian religion causes people to be more or less honest?
With
less
whom? With themselves?
Because they're trying. because they're in this box. They have to stay in this box that says Christianity on it. And as long as they're around anybody that's in their church, anybody, like, people go to church on Sunday and praise God, and then Monday they walk in my store and beat their children. Like, this is what I see. So they're obviously playing a role because it's more of a social event to them than it is to actual belief, obviously. Or they would stick to it all week long and wouldn't be cussing and screaming in the store. Damn, I was on a roll too. Moving on.
I'll say I think
Just
it's
blank.
I think both, because I think at the end of the day, people are people. You get good people and assholes everywhere. There's assholes in Christianity or religion, no doubt about it. There's good people as well, and I think it's everyone is everyone. It's realistically the only difference that I have with someone who goes to church is our difference on where we end up after we die. Most of the time, it's a few other sort of differences as well. But I mean, I don't think I changed who I was when I deconverted. I guess it's just one day I woke up and realized I didn't believe and decided to pursue a different path. But yeah, there's good people, and hey, there's plenty of assholes in the atheist community. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah,
there's a hell of a lot of there's as many assholes in the atheist community as there is in the Christian community. I mean, I can tell you, there's a lot of Christian preachers and pastors I'd rather sit down and have a conversation with, as opposed to some of the people in people.
Chris, when I said that Christianity box people, I was talking about the ones that really don't act like they're not good people, is what I meant. I didn't mean to say Christians. I mean, I know some Christians that are amazing people, and I know some atheists that are complete fucking assholes. So yeah, I agree.
No, I didn't take it that way. It's and I got what you were talking about.
No, you're only a partial asshole. You're not a complete asshole.
So you're being too honest there. It's the Sunday Christians, the ones who will show up and they put on the church, what we used to call church face, where they'll be I'm happy, everything's wonderful, and my life's just and realistically, it's just they're full of shit. Yeah, and we used to, and that's why I say that in Australia, 10% of people go to church, but 5% only believe. It's because half the people there were just they weren't who they were. I remember talking to an Anglican minister once, and he said that there's a lot of churches and a lot of outreach programs that go out in the community to find the non-church going people, but he said his biggest ministry was to the people sitting in the pews in his church. He said, because they're the ones we need to reach for Jesus. And I'm just like, you know what, that is such a true point. I hope you didn't reach any of them for Jesus.
I think I might be getting a little philosophical here, but I get stuck on the word honest. Like, what does honest even mean? Because I think anything in this culture that socializes us, that tells us how to behave and how to think without our awareness of that happening, makes us dishonest. But is that dishonest? Because even if you realize that you've been socialized in a particular way and you opt out of it, you leave religion. A lot of people who leave religion think that they're no longer being socialized, that they're no longer being impacted by cultural narratives, and they are. They are, because I might have put down the Kool-Aid a long time ago, but I kept on drinking Kool-Aids of, white supremacy and that kind of thing, thinking that America was better, that white people were better, in a very subconscious place of my mind. And so, I think it's a scale. It's a constant paradigm shifting of okay, great. We let go of religion and we're going to work on deconstructing that and rebuilding a worldview that is more honest. But there's going to be constantly new worldviews that are going to be brought to our attention that we've ingested without our awareness of it. And we're going to constantly be kind of purging those out. But we're constantly going to be affected by our culture and how we're socialized. And so it's this weird trip of trying to be more honest about yourself, but still knowing that you're going to constantly be affected by messaging that's out there in the world.
Honestly, it's going to be something that you're sorry.
When I was in the Christian religion, I did feel that I was very dishonest in certain times and places. Now, I was not what B described. I was a devout believer. I mean, we were in church every Sunday and every Wednesday. I was in the choir. I taught Sunday school. I taught home Bible study. I mean, I was in it for, the works. I went on short-term mission trips. I believed it hook, line, and sinker. But one of the things I believed about it was that, this is the good life. It doesn't get any better than this. And you need to sell it. You need to sell it to everyone else. And because if you don't sell it, they're going to hell, and you don't want them to go to hell. So you need to let them think that this is absolutely the best possible life. And so I always pretended that everything in my life was perfect, like you were describing, Chris. And I did it because, one, there were people at the church, usually the elders of the church. It wasn't usually the pastor. It was usually a lot of the older men. We're always, make sure you got a smile on your face. You're saved. Jesus loves you. Your life doesn't get any better than that. So you need to show it. And so that's what I did, and eventually it just got too much for me, and it broke me. It broke me.
Mm-hmm. I think with honesty, it's such a big concept, because there's certain parts of my life that I don't share with people because I choose not to share with people. Now, does that mean I'm being dishonest? Well, no. It's just because I've made that choice. An example was when I first came into the community, I didn't use my name. I went under the name Atheist Pastor, and I was very ambiguous about who I was, where I lived, and a lot of things about my life. That was a choice that I made. It wasn't a dishonest choice, but it was something I chose. Now, if there was certain aspects of my life that I choose not to share, or I indicate that aren't part, an aspect of my life, well, once again, that's a choice. And I don't think it's necessarily an honesty thing. I think it's a choice. I mean, it's such a big concept, and I'm certainly not a philosopher, and I've never studied philosophy, but I'd imagine there'd be probably books and volumes of books written on it. But I really think I guess it probably comes back to the theme for me throughout this conversation is everything's context and circumstantial. It's all about the situation.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
And even after understanding the context, it's still not black and white.
No. Incidentally, I just want to say, if it ever seems like I'm talking over anyone at any stage, because I'm on the other side of the planet, there's a slight delay. So what could happen is I could start talking a few seconds after someone else has. So please, if I've done that at any stage, I'm getting used to it as I'm going on this internet journey. So just for those in the comments, it's always a disclaimer. I normally give it a lot earlier, but I think it's happened a couple of times.
I haven't noticed it at all.
Oh, good. You'll notice it now.
Just so you know, Chris, now that you know I'm a pretty honest person, I don't think anybody here is offended by it. We do that over here when we're a state away from each other. So it's not a big deal. I think you've only done it a couple times, and it's not. Yeah, we're not worried about that. Yeah. That's a little shit. Yeah, just a little shit.
Marie, did you want to say anything about Ricardo's comment?
Let's see. What does it say? Theoretically speaking, all is narrative. Honesty is definitional. Your belief in the position. I don't understand the entire sentence.
Ricardo's South American, so sometimes they can be a little bit lost in the translation.
I think they're Portuguese, right? But
yeah.
Ricardo, you can tag me under everyone's autonomous. It's not under my name.
Yeah, someone else told him that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah, that's actually one of my partners.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if I'm supposed to call him out, but it just happened.
Slightly not really doxed you on YouTube.
He has no shame. I think he'll be fine with it. I don't know.
Apologies
we'll find out.
Ricardo said that he's not. Apologies. I thought you were South American, so apologies there.
I thought they said they were Portuguese. But yeah, I think they're right. I don't know that I totally understood it, and I might be about a beer into this. So I'm just going to say you're right, Ricardo.
You should
You're
should have
right.
another beer. The more you
Yeah.
drink, the more you can
More
articulate
agreeable
things. And
I am.
you solve the problems of the world. I find that, it's normally about 10 beers in. The world's fixed. Just needs to listen to me.
That happens to me when I smoke cannabis. I get incredibly intelligent. Oh, yeah.
You know what's weird about that?
His work
I'm
knows,
ADHD.
the donut lady knows.
The donut lady knows.
The donut
Go and get
lady
donuts,
I'm
and he's like,
ADHD, and if I smoke, I actually think better. I literally, I can focus on what someone's saying to me.
yep.
When I had my own painting company years ago, last one I had was in 2015. I would smoke before and during work. Like, I'd take a break, go out to lunch, because I would just paint like amazing. Everything looked great, and I did it quick, and I was focused. And next thing I knew, the day was done. It was great. If I didn't do that, my brain would be everywhere, and I'd be like, "What am I painting?" So I mean, I guess it depends on who you are, but if I could do that legally every single day of my life, I would.
Yep.
Because, man, that's good shit. Where you guys get like, I'm like, oh, I can think straight now. Yes.
It's that magical
Same.
plant.
Right. That's why I don't need to make notes, Marie. It just
Thank you,
keeps going.
Jesus, for the cannabis.
I'm sorry,
Thank you,
Chris.
Heavenly Father.
Yes,
Praise
thank you,
Jesus.
Jesus. Well, I mean, hey, all the plants came from God. God put it on this earth. Then we should use it. It's for medicinal purposes.
Yeah.
And if it keeps me from killing someone that's a total dumbass, then I think it's good.
Praise
And
God.
I
The
listen
Christians out there, they really wouldn't want to argue with God. I mean, do they know better than God? God put it there.
Purple Rhymes with Orange says weed doesn't affect me much, but a couple of drinks sometimes slows my brain down enough so that I can follow my own thoughts.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it can
get
be
it,
a good
Purple.
leveler for me sometimes. It shuts me up. Amazingly.
Oh,
Coffee,
man.
on the other hand.
Well, we have been at this for a little over an hour and a half. And I think we've covered the topic fairly well. So I'm going to go
And 10
ahead.
other ones.
Yeah.
This has been a fun chat. I've got to say, this has been good. I like
Yeah,
this.
yeah. You
Good.
guys are
I'm,
Yeah,
awesome.
this is good.
I'm glad you enjoyed
Same.
it. So before we sign off, I'm going to let everyone say what they've got coming up. And, just shill for yourself a bit. And if anyone in the chat wants to throw up some links to anything, that I would appreciate that greatly. So Chris, what have you got coming up in the near future?
Okay, well, as always, Friday Night Six Pack is on. I was going to be doing a podcast tonight, my time, but I've got a few papers I've got to get written, so I'm probably not going to be doing much in the next day, apart from about this time tomorrow. I'm over on Steve McRae's channel. We're doing a chat on politics, which is me, the conservative, him, the liberal. So if you want to see someone argue with Steve McRae, you'll get to see that. Some people like that. It's their thing, whatever. But Friday Night Six Pack's the main thing that we've got coming up this week. We're still working on the topic, but it should be... We're possibly doing a bit of a follow-up on some of the fringe religions that we were speaking about last week. So regardless, I'll be having a couple of drinks. You can see me talk a lot less and in a more relaxed and mellow state. There'll be no coffee involved. And it's always a good crowd, actually. I actually had, I think it was the three of you were on a few weeks ago. Anyone who hasn't seen that, and I know I'm definitely shilling my own channel here, it was a conversation on women in the atheist community. I wasn't in it. There was no men in there. It was one of the coolest conversations I think I've ever seen. It was probably it was something I would consider an educational experience for me as a man in understanding how women feel in the atheist community. So I definitely say, if you liked what you saw here and not me, Go check out that video. It was a really cool conversation. But it's Friday Night Six Pack, Hereticals podcast, Atheist Pastor podcast. There's always something I'm doing. I think I spend more time in front of my computer camera than I do working which I really need to work on. But anyway, I like it. I like it. It's a cool community. What can I say?
And Marie, I was so honored that you agreed to come on this stream because I only asked you like 2 days ago, and I was trying to think, who usually talks about relationships, and I went, Marie, I need Marie, and so then I found you, and yeah, it didn't take that long, but it took me about 5 minutes searching to find a link for you, and then and then you said yes, and that was really great.
Oh, I'm just honored to be invited. That's cool that you're thinking like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh my God, thanks for having me on. It's mutual.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
I instantly, well, not instantly. It was about maybe like an hour later. Everybody was in our little thing on Twitter in our group. And I was like, Granny just asked me to come on her channel. Am I fucking special or what? Like, I literally said something like that because I was like, why did she want to talk to me?
Special, B.
I don't know
Special.
shit. No. I don't know about that.
So what do you
I've
have
just been
coming
kicked
up?
around the block a few times.
Well,
I am off tomorrow, and I think in the middle of the day, like around 1 or 2 or something, I'm going to see what everybody's doing. I'm going to do a random open hangout because I'm almost at 400 subscribers. So I'm hoping maybe
cool.
I'll get that other 3 or 4 tonight. And so I'm going to do a 400 open hangout and have whoever the hell wants to jump in. Especially Math Pig, because I'm going to tell you, if it wasn't for Math Pig, I'd probably be at about 190. He introduced me to all of you guys. I wouldn't even be at 190. That's a lie. I'd be at 90. He introduced me to all you guys and brought me into this community. And I just want to say, I love that guy. He's like a brother to me. We have just spent so much time talking to get to know each other, and he's just a really good guy, and he's all about helping the community. So if any of you out there like, I want to make my channel a little better, I don't know what to do, I need some advice, I need some art, I need something, just talk to Math Pig. He'll send you in the right direction.
What time is your conversation tomorrow, B?
Oh, I don't know yet. I'm just going to go try not to overlap with people I give a shit about in this community. That's pretty much what I do. If you want to jump on, Marie, let me know. I mean, I'm all over Twitter. And
was asking in the chat.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Early afternoonish, because I want all my UK people to be able to come over too. So maybe in the between that 12 and 4 or 5 time that everybody's actually doing shit, I'll fill the gaps. Keep you guys from getting bored. Anyways, Granny, thanks for having me on. I just want to say that before you get off here. It meant a lot to me. Chris, it was nice. It was nice to be able to actually talk to you and learn a little bit about your brain instead of just watching you and us doing that and not really talking. And Marie, it's always great having a conversation with you. You're brilliant and you're funny as hell. And I love that you just fucking say it. And you might be my new best friend, whether you like it or not. I'll stalk you later.
Okay.
I mean, I'll see you later.
And Marie, what do you have coming up?
Oh God. Jesus. Well, I just recorded an episode with Jenna Belk
nice.
of the Atheist Experience on her show called Atheist Stasis. And it's on YouTube. And we're going to do several interviews together because apparently we get along a lot. And so we recorded a short one today, and we're going to do another one in a couple of weeks. There should be an episode coming out where I've been interviewed on the Glass Box podcast by Bryce.
Yeah. I know him. Oh, he's
cool. Yeah.
Naked Mormon, Nagel. Yeah, him. So I interviewed with him and Marissa Alexa McCool, and we talked about polyamory and ethical non-monogamy. So if you're curious about that, when that episode was supposed to come out today, so he might be behind, but that's going to come out. And then I'm also going to be on a show called Curious Fox on July 28th. It's a podcast about relationships and sex. It's not, necessarily atheist or anything. It's a broader discussion. So I'll be promoting that on social media. What else am I fucking doing?
God, if you tell us much more, I'm going to have to get a notebook.
Yeah, seriously. There's a lot going on, but like, yeah.
Let's just timestamp it, watch it back later.
Yeah, just follow me on social media. I'll promote the events that come out. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay, very good. And I have done 2 very heavy topics in a row. That last video was very heavy, and this stream was pretty heavy too. So I want to do something light this week. And I have been trying to figure out the best time to launch my Teespring line. And so I will have a video coming out in a couple of days to launch my Teespring line. And that's all.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm doing something on the podcast now. Damn it, B. I'm doing a thing on my podcast now. I'm providing free ad space to Black business owners. So if there's anyone listening who is a Black business owner or who knows someone who's a Black business owner, send them my way. I am getting about 500 downloads per episode right now. So it's not insignificant, but I would love to promote Black businesses and encourage if any of you have a platform where something like that could be feasible to perhaps explore doing that as well to support that community.
Okay.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Something I can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So thank you everyone in the chat for coming. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, live your life. Bye.